We are convened as of 12:02 p.m. I respectfully ask everyone attending to mute yourself unless you are recognized to speak. I'm Lynn Geisinger. I am chair of call the roll for the rest of the committee. First Vice Chair Catlin.
Here.
Second Vice Chair Davidson.
Here.
Treasurer Deschel. Not here. And Secretary Sloan.
Here.
Also see Director Tisdale and Director Guzman. Is there anybody I am missing? Comment to anyone who would like to address the committee regarding any topic listed in the published meeting agenda for the current and immediately preceding month. If you wish to speak and have not already done so, please either raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your phone. During this time, the committee will not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you would like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please email the RTD board office at rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. Mr. Kroll, are there any hands raised or public comment?
Thank you, Chair Geisinger. We did not receive any public comment in advance, and while we have two members of the public here, Janet Kuhn and Stephanie Winsler from the Office of the State Auditor, neither have indicated a willingness or a desire to speak.
Great, thank you. And any email comments? No, none of those. Okay.
None of those as well.
No participants. We will close the public comment period at this time. There are 4 recommended actions this afternoon. As a reminder for the committee, staff, and anyone watching or listening, any action items that are passed by the executive committee, even if the vote is unanimous, will be included on the board agenda under recommended actions, so the full board will have an opportunity to discuss the measure presented. The first recommended action under consideration by the committee is for the audit committee member appointments. The action is for the executive committee to reappoint Director Bobby Deschel and Director Peggy Catlin as members of the audit committee with terms expiring December 31, 2025. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Director Sloan, and a second? I'll second it. So Director Sloan is the movement and I am the second. I would ask our CFO, Doug McLeod, to please present this item. Hi, Doug.
Hi. Sorry. Good afternoon. I apologize. I'm still trying to get logged in here. Chair, which item is it? I apologize.
No problem. It's the audit committee member appointments.
Thank you very much. I do not have a presentation in the packet. What we're requesting is to reappoint audit committee members. As the executive committee knows, we have 5 members on the audit committee. 3 are internal members, 3 board members, and then we have 2 external members on the audit committee. The audit committee was formed, over the past year as a replacement. We've also contracted out the audit function to an external firm. Reuben Brown, several audits have been completed. We have made good progress on some of those audits, as the executive committee is aware. Just pulling up the item right now. Apologize.
No problem.
So currently we have Director Bobby Deschel as the chair, Jim Brindell as vice chair, Director Catlin also as a member, and Director Davidson. Jim Brindell as the vice chair and John Olenberg are both external members. Their terms expire. Director Deschel as the chair, his term expires December 31st, 2023. Director Catlin's term on the audit committee expires at the end of this year as well, on December 31st, 2023. This item requests that the executive committee approve the extension of both directors Deschel and Director Catlin's terms with the audit committee through December 31st, 2025. Each member's terms are staggered on 2 years so that we always have a full contingent. With that, Chair Geisinger, I'll answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug, and sorry if we took that by surprise. Is there any discussion or any questions? Director Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought it would be inappropriate to move or second on my extension. So hence, so I appreciate you seconding the motion. I just wanted to say that I had originally volunteered to just have one-year term because I was not sure that I was going to be on the board again. But obviously I'm still on the board. So I just wanted to say that's why I opted for the 1 year when we formed the committee.
Great, thank you. We appreciate your service. Director Davidson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, thanks, Doug, for going through that. I figured I'd just highlight the staggered term piece as well. And the board office does have a chart, and I know this is going to take some getting used to here. But we do have a chart that's available from the board office that we had created as part of this. I could screen share it if that would be requested, but essentially at any given time, we have 3 directors from the elected board on. I would be, I had been serving in a 2-year term, and then, oh, thank you for sharing that. So this doesn't have the names on it. Oh, thank you. That was in the packet. I had completely forgotten that's in our packet. Thank you. So I think just the other thing to note that I wanted to make sure that we add is that directors Catlin and Deschel with this action, if I'm not mistaken, would go into 2-year terms, expiring at the end of 2025. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. And then we have 2 of those other external members. Jack, thanks for bringing that up and sharing that, and for including in the packet. My apologies for forgetting that. So just wanted to make sure that we had this clear between us with the action we're taking. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say how much I appreciate the hard work that our CFO McLeod has put in, and all of you on the committee. It was I attended the last audit committee meeting, and I think there's some really excellent work being done, and I appreciate all of your work. Did you have more, Director Catlin?
Yes, I did. For those directors who are on the call that may not have been part of that process initially, the 3 directors who sit on the audit committee did have to apply, and we applied using the same criteria by which we selected the external members of the audit committee. So going forward, I think there would be an expectation that interested directors would also need to formally apply for the position. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Are there any no votes on this action? Oh, excuse me. Our general counsel, Ms. Snyder.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is General Counsel Melanie Snyder. I just wanted to note for the record, Doug, it looks like we inadvertently left out the audit committee charter in the packet. So when we publish this for the full board meeting, we can add that.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, moving to the vote. Are there any no votes on this action? Seeing none. Dell isn't here, so there are 5 yes votes and 0 no votes and 0 abstentions. The motion passes. All right, our second recommended action is the board's schedule for in-person and remote meetings. For the board of directors to approve the default meeting location for full board and committee meetings. In adopting this action, unless otherwise determined by the chair in consultation with the executive committee, the board anticipates holding all standing and ad hoc committee meetings virtually, and holding monthly board meetings, special board meetings, and study sessions in person at the 1660 Lake Street offices. In-person meetings will retain a hybrid or virtual option for public participation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So moved, Director Davidson.
All right, I heard Director Catlin first and a second from Director Davidson. I would just like to add that I believe this will be onto the agenda as an item from the chair rather than you know, a 3-director initiated action or any other way. This is something that we heard pretty clear support from the board in our study session. So we're moving this forward to the board. Or is there discussion? Okay. Moving to the vote, are there any no votes on this action? Great. With, pardon me, I think I misstated the last one with 4 yes votes and 0 no votes, which was also true. If you can clean up that transcript for me, Mr. Kroll, on the previous vote, this motion passes. Director Deschel again is not here. So next is the revised Board of Directors expense and reimbursement policy, and the recommended action is for the Board of Directors to approve the revised RTD Board of Directors expense and reimbursement policy, which, if approved, will take effect on January 1, 2024. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Director
Second, Davidson.
Second from Director Davidson. Thank you. I would like to ask Jack Kroll, our Board Office Executive Manager, to discuss.
Yes, thank you, Chair Geisinger. And just as an FYI, at some points when you're speaking, we're having a little time, at least I'm having a little hard time hearing you. So you cut out a little bit at the end there. But on this one, the only change that you all are seeing on this document from the last time you all saw it, which was at the study session in October, is that section 5, the word initial was stricken. And so now that reads, directors are eligible for reimbursement for a home office setup package, as opposed to an initial home office setup package. So everything remains the same about this. We're cleaning things up. We're modernizing expenses and also setting clear deadlines within the document for directors to submit those expense reimbursement requests.
Thank you very much. I see our GM CEO, Ms. Johnson.
Yes, thank you very kindly. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and all those assembled. Deborah Johnson, General Manager and CEO. Just for your edification, I did want to call attention to package page 52, Article 7, professional affiliation, membership subscription, second paragraph. It begins with membership subscriptions in local chambers or approved organizations are processed through the RTD Public Relations Office. Some of this is antiquated language. I wanted you to be cognizant of it. More so, the last sentence of that paragraph speaks of the board policy on organizational memberships was passed in August of 2011. I have asked Stuart Summers, our Chief Communications and Engagement Officer, in conjunction with John McKay of the Executive Office, as well as with our Office of Civil Rights, as we look at the memberships of which this organization has. You may recall from previous discussions with our local advocate being Catalyst Communications, more specifically with Jennifer Webster. We're trying to be intentional. There's a myriad of memberships in which people have joined that have been on the books for years, and it gives the appearance as if RTD isn't engaged and at the table. So hence we're in the process of that. So I have asked staff to coordinate with the board office so we can shore that up. And I just put that out here, recognizing that it states that any memberships the board office wants to have, we need to ensure that there's collaboration so we know who's on first. So I wanted to take this opportunity just to say that. So if there are modifications going forward to the organizational memberships policy, which I foresee being in the near future, that there would be collaboration with the executive office and the board office to ensure that we are putting our best foot forward and are engaged at the appropriate times with the appropriate entities in the appropriate forums. Thank you very kindly for the opportunity to offer that comment.
And thank you very much for that effort and for the collaboration with the board office. And it sounds like we're cleaning up an area that is good to be looking at. So thanks. Is there any other discussion on this item? With no discussion, no one raising their hands, we'll move to the vote. Are there any no votes on this action? Seeing none, with 4 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 0 abstentions, the motion passes. Next is bylaws amendment. Our final item is the bylaws amendment for the director informal meeting process, which is for the board of directors to amend Article 4 of the bylaws of the Regional Transportation District to establish a procedure for informal meetings to engage in discussions of public business with 3 or more board members. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I hear is the movement, which is very appropriate, and I hear Director Catlin as the second. Thank you both. Again, this would be one that would be that the chair would be putting on the agenda coming out of the discussion at the study session. I have asked Director Sloan if she could lead the discussion on this and give us a quick presentation.
Yes, I would note this does not have to be a very long presentation or discussion. According to the chronology, very well put together by Jack Kroll. It's close to the first anniversary of when it was first presented to the full board. So I know people are familiar with it. The idea is that this provision allows the board to move more, to take action more efficiently and more transparently by allowing 3 or more members in accordance with the Open Meetings Act to discuss matters that don't necessarily involve the whole board, whether it's a nascent idea that not everyone is yet interested on the board, or whether it's just for one local area and only the board members in that area have an interest. So this is designed to be totally in line with Colorado law and the open meetings law. And I understand now that actually some members have already had trial runs of informal meetings, and I would call on Jack to explain how this has gone so far. And I would note the only difference between the way these earlier meetings have gone and under the structured proposal for the bylaw is that board members would actually get more information about the substance of a proposed informal meeting. So Jack, if you could flesh out briefly what has already transpired.
Great, thank you, Director Sloan. And yeah, I would just say that the process for now is that we are receiving regular updates from a group of board members that include Directors Ruscha, Guzman, and Harwick, who are hosting outreach events and sort of education events around pedestrian safety throughout the district. And what we do now is we take the information from those meetings or about those meetings, notes, agendas, etc., and we link to those from our 2-week calendar, which is published on the board's website. The 2-week calendar includes also a link to the Zoom meetings for those events. So far, they've been virtual meetings, but if there were to be any in-person meetings, we would, of course, appropriately notice the location of those events as well. And the final thing I'll say on this front is every year, the board takes an action in January to designate the official meeting notification location. And that is currently the board's website. So by providing this information on the 2-week calendar on the board's website, we are officially posting information about these informal meetings in the location and designation you all have chosen to post such information. And that's all I got.
And
you.
Lynn, that's all I have too. Thanks.
Thank you both very much. Is there any further discussion? As Director Sloan pointed out, this has been something that we have discussed in the past, but we're open for more if you have it. And I will also thank Director Sloan for her work on moving this forward. Ms. Snyder?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just one clerical thing to note, can work with board staff on packet page 60. The table of contents, there's just a couple typos. We've got in Article 4, we have Section 4 listed a couple times, and then I think the page numbers just need to be adjusted. So just clerical adjustments that we can get updated for the full board packet.
Great, thank you very much. Anybody else? All right. I'll call for the vote. Are there any no votes on this action? Seeing none, we have the motion passing with 4 yes votes, 0 no votes, and 0 abstentions. All right. November board meeting agenda review is next up. Is there a motion to move the November board agenda to the board meeting on November 28th?
So moved, Davidson.
And a second?
Second.
I heard Director Davidson as the movement and Director Sloan as the second. Is there any discussion? Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I note on the agenda that the board public hearing on the budget is noted on the agenda. There is, however, no item on the agenda for the approval of the board budget. And I was wondering whether we wanted to include that.
That's a very good call, Mr. Kroll.
Yeah, thank you, Director Tisdale. In reviewing the agenda for this, note on, and let me just share my screen real quick. Okay, a note here on section 15 XV, public hearing for budget, A, proposed budget, then we list the motion here for the board of directors to adopt resolution number and series, etc. This did give me a little pause when I was reviewing this, and I went back and looked at how the budget was approved for 2023, and this is how it was listed on that agenda as well, roughly a year ago. So the board office is certainly open to rephrasing or adjusting this in some manner, and would appreciate the direction to do so.
Thank you. And my comment is merely that, yes, the public hearing is noted and that's appropriate and has to be separately identified, but I submit that it is required that we include the approval of the budget either under unanimous consent, which it qualifies because it was passed unanimously out of the Finance Committee on Tuesday night, or as a recommended action, which we know it's going to be treated anyway, because I will ask if it is on the unanimous consent agenda that it be removed to the recommended action agenda, but nonetheless, it needs to appear one place or the other. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that is, I was going to recommend that too. And now that we have one person requesting recommended action agenda, but we could just clarify that, please, Jack, that the motion there is a recommended action, I think, to move it forward.
We can, if I'm hearing you correctly, we can change item A under XB to read recommended action approval of 2024 proposed budget.
I think
Great. We will do that.
Thank you. Director Sloan.
Yes, we are honoring a retiree, so it may be appropriate to put the employee appreciation statement in this agenda.
Good idea. I think let's do that. It's also our last meeting of the year, last regular meeting of the year. So I think it's a good time to add that to state our appreciation to our employees. Sound good, Mr. Kroll? Anybody else? With those two changes, we have a motion to approve. Are there any, and I assume the movement and the second are okay with adding those changes to our motion? Great. Are there any no votes on this action? Seeing none, we have 4 yes votes, 0 no votes, 0 abstentions, so the motion passes. All right, we have 2 discussion items on the agenda this afternoon. The first item is the monthly Government Relations Committee Government Relations Report for November 2023. I understand that Mr. Davies is unavailable. Ms. GM CEO, Ms. Johnson, would you please present this item?
Yes, thank you very kindly, Madam Chair. Deborah Johnson, once again, General Manager and CEO. And I am here to present to you the Government Relations Report for November 2023. Contained in your board packet page 143, we provide a summary relative to what has happened at the federal, state, and local levels. This report was submitted into the packet on November 9th. Today, I would like to add additional information relative to what has occurred since the time of the submittal of this report. Recognizing activity at the state level on November 9th, Governor Polis issued Executive Order D 2023-024, calling for a special session following voters' rejection during the November election of Proposition HH concerning property tax changes. Among the specific topics included in the governor's call are property tax relief to reduce Coloradans' tax burden in 2023, the fiscal impact of the tax relief package on the interests of schools and local governments that are funded with property tax, Tabor tax refund mechanisms for 2023 only, and rental assistance for state fiscal year 2022 through 2023. Legislators can only introduce legislation during the special session that deals directly with the items specified in the governor's call. The special session is scheduled to commence tomorrow, Friday, November 17th. The session will last at least 3 days, given that this is the absolute minimum time required for passage of legislation pursuant to the Colorado Constitution. As an aside, the 2024 regular legislative session will commence on Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. As it relates to the specific topics, quite naturally, there is an interest relative to the Tabor tax refund mechanisms for 2023 only. I would like to note that our state advocates, being Brandeberry McKenna, will be following this and will be advising us accordingly relative to activity and outcomes pursuant to said special session. As it relates to the federal update, quite naturally, there's been a lot of activity over the course of the past few days with Speaker Johnson in the House. So getting to the federal side, following the passage of a short-term funding bill earlier in the year to prevent the shutdown of the federal government, on Tuesday, November 14th, the House of Representatives passed a subsequent stopgap bill to keep the government open. Late Wednesday, the Senate passed the stopgap to fund the government through January 19th, 2024. And by all accounts, the White House has indicated that President Biden's willingness to sign it. This plan just kicks the can for less than an eloquent term. It gives lawmakers time to attempt to negotiate and pass full year spending bills through though major partisan divisions are expected to make those efforts complicated. And on the local front, the report pretty much stands as is. There was a great meeting that happened last Thursday, November 9th, with a collective meeting of the sub-regional service councils that talked about a myriad of different issues, specifically as we look to 2024. With the call for Projects Partnership Program, we accepted input and feedback. And as we all know, this is an evolutionary process. And quite naturally, there was great support. And then as indicated in the report that's written in the packet, there was a great meeting that happened with Arapahoe County Commissioners and Mayors on Friday, November 3rd. Our local advocate Catalyst was in attendance along with Chief Joel Fitzgerald, as well as Michael Davies and Director Rosenthal. I was unable to attend, but by all accounts, this was a great turning point relative to what we're doing, showcasing our collaborative efforts and our engagement with our county partners. And with that, Madam Chair, that will conclude my report, and I will yield the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, discussion? Other things to add? I would just add that the presentation I just gave here at the chamber has been the driving force behind the Boulder area Subregional Service Council's gun barrel shuttle, one of our first projects that's being funded in the partnership program. And they're very excited about RTD's partnership program and about the work they've been doing with RTD staff on moving that forward. And so that was nice to hear. Any other discussion? Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I was just wondering if anybody had any intelligence concerning a renewed effort to submit a bill this coming session relative to the transformation of the RTD board from an elected board to an appointed board.
I can take a shot at that. Lots of rumors, lots of discussion of what could happen. I think there are two areas that they're looking at. One of them is additional funding for RTD, and one of them is some sort of change in the governance. And there's, from what I'm hearing, there's no consensus on what that change would be. That, would it be an appointed board? Would it be a hybrid board? Would it not be a change in the board, but perhaps some change in the way decisions are made along the lines of what DRCOG's TIP process is, subregional forums, things like that. We've had some conversations. I think Senator Winter and Representative Lindstedt have been working on trying to move that bill forward, but my sense is that they're looking for suggestions at this point and don't have a real plan. I see Director Davidson, you have something to add there?
Well, thank you, Chair. I think you covered pretty much all of it, but I just was also going to note that as was noted in the report, and thank you, Ms. Johnson, for providing the report today. Chair Geisinger and myself did attend along with Mr. Davies and Ms. Johnson an event at the governor's office, and there were a number of stakeholders there discussing matters related to transportation funding. These spanned not just RTD matters, but CDOT, Front Range Passenger Rail considerations. The president and CEO, Andy Carcian, was there. So the way that session was structured was in breakouts, and folks were separated into groups to have discussions around opportunities for transportation in Colorado. And what I would say is, from what I observed at the breakout that I had been a part of, that there really there's an appetite right now to look at transportation funding and structural changes to how we fund public transportation, which I think is tremendous and gives us a real opportunity. It does seem to me, and again, I would say this is very much anecdotal because we are in that rumor phase, as the chair mentioned, that there is a linkage between, in people's minds, the idea of approaching alternative funding structures or opportunities and adjustments to governance structure of the RTD board. So that struck me as being very linked. And then as Chair Geising, I would just emphasize that my understanding is Representative Lindstedt and Senator Winter are very much in information gathering mode at this point in terms of what an actual structure might look like.
And I think that you know, as we move towards the legislative session and actually get into it early in the year, if they're starting to come up with ideas, it may make sense for the board to look at some principles and you know, some sort of statement, study session or at the retreat or something like that. Let's stay tuned. Anything else? All right. Our next discussion item is the potential bylaw amendment on committee work plans. Mr. Kroll, can you please present this item?
Thank you, Chair Geisinger. I have shared my screen here. A text of the proposed change developed by the board office. As you may recall, this item was discussed at the fall 2023 governance study session in October, and there was consensus provided that this idea was worth exploring further, and board office received direction on that to develop some language around the proposed bylaw change, I should say. And that language is in the packet and here before you as well. And I'll just say that the process would be if there's any conversation on this now, we would be happy to take it, use that conversation to revise this, bring something back for further evaluation at the next regularly scheduled board meeting in January. In addition, your input as the executive committee will be succeeded by input at the November 28th board meeting, as this item will appear as a discussion item at that board meeting, and we'll combine the feedback received from you all as the executive committee and the feedback received by the board members in November. And then if it's still something the board wants to pursue, we would bring back a revised version of it if there are any revisions to be made in January. And I guess I'll leave it at that. See if there's any thoughts or discussion, and I'll leave the language here for everyone to review.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll. First Vice Chair Catlin, I see your hand up for discussion.
Yes, thank you. I think also in October, we talked about either an outline or a template for such work plans that would be provided prior to the end of the year so that those folks who are interested in chairing a committee might know what lay ahead. So I would appreciate seeing some sort of an outline or a template or just a guide for these work plans. Thank you.
Does that work for your work plans, Mr. Kroll, and the board office before the end of the year?
Yeah, I think what I had in mind based off of that feedback is we can go back, part of what the value of a work plan is it affords board members who have similar interests in a given topic to ensure that updates are provided in an orderly fashion on that topic, and that administration on issues of significant importance has the time and ability to plan ahead for that. That being said, much of the work plan, is really going to be driven by the items that come forward on a regular basis that administration brings. And so what we can do in response to Director Catlin's request is we can go back and look through we have a whole spreadsheet that we've been maintaining now for at least a couple of years that's called our look ahead spreadsheet. And we can go back through and easily collate items that have come before the various committees over the last few years. And many of them will be cyclical items. The budget follows a similar cadence every year. The service changes likewise follow a similar cadence. And we can put those forward as an outline template type of thing for those who are considering which committees they may want to serve on, etc.
Thank you, Director Davidson.
Yeah, thanks. And Mr. Kroll, thanks for putting this forward. I think this is an opportunity for significant improvement. I think one of the general comments that I just put out there as food for thought, I think for all of us as we think about long-term governance changes, is whether or not we would want to explore committees being 2-year appointments, and whether or not then by extension we would want to consider 2-year plans. I'm not suggesting that now. I just think I don't want to lose sight of that discussion we had of how do we maintain continuity of not just the work plan, but also the committees themselves, and the knowledge that's developed by directors serving on those committees. Actually, I had another question, but I'm going to pause there because although it was just a comment, Mr. Kroll, I saw your hand go up. So if you have a comment on that, go for it.
Yeah, just very quickly, Director Davidson, the item around 2-year committee appointments, it is something that is on our list to discuss based off of the conversation that was held on the 18th of October at the study session. However, in consultation with the chair, just given the volume of things that are coming before the board this week, I worked with her, and we'll bring that discussion back in November.
Cool.
Or not November, January, excuse me. And I've done some preliminary research that I'm happy to fill you in on that front.
Cool. Yeah, no, that sounds great. Thank you. Great. And then my other question is one potentially also for you, Mr. Kroll, and potentially for Ms. Johnson as well, which is just what opportunities there are to intersect with staff and optimize. I mean, I'm assuming that, staff, for example, like you mentioned, the budget's a great example that we have an idea of when that's coming forward. And Ms. Johnson commented the other night about our intent to be a lot more purposeful and deliberate about our process for budgeting. I would suspect the things that have regular cadence, we can make sure that the committee work plan really jives with staff. I know it's commenting here that that's the intent in the language, which is great, but I think just in practice, are there common project management tools? Are there common existing work plans? Are there common things that we might be able to intersect so we can optimize a little bit?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Director Davidson, for the question. So recognizing on a recurring basis, there are things that come before the board. And in doing so, the members of the leadership team, we meet regularly. When I meet with my team, I discuss, that's a general topic of what's coming before the board. More specifically, there is collaboration with the board office, and it's a process that is still in an evolutionary stage. But the whole intent is that we come together on a monthly basis, and it's not just the leadership team and members of the board office. There's representation from contracts and procurement and certain individuals within the organization that may be shepherding a project or initiative. And we qualify that as a look ahead as it relates to items that go before the board, be it for recommended action, be it for discussion, or be it for preparation purposes, if it's a study session or what we will qualify as informational items. And we do that for the course of the year, and we have some elements that are to be determined. Mr. Kroll, since his arrival at the organization, has taken a lead in coordinating that through the executive office, through the board office, and chairing that meeting with members of the executive office and the greater leadership team and the others that I qualified. So with that as a backdrop, yes, there are things in place that could be used to fuel the creation or formation of a committee work plan. And then more specifically, once there is an understanding of who may be in that spot, the leadership team executive sponsor will be available, as we have had those discussions with the leadership team, to ensure that they're at the ready to lend that support, recognizing that there are pre-meetings to ensure that the representative committee chair and or chair, vice chair are adeptly, aware of the items that are coming before. So there's room for opportunity, and we're here to support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks,
ahead.
Ms. Johnson. Sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. You actually touched on that next part of where I was going with this. So thanks for just commenting on that process. I think the other thing that I just wanted to mention, I think there's an opportunity in here is if we put together the work plan, much the way, for example, the audit plan has the plan that we're going to go through, and then we have the ad hoc audits that there's sort of holding place. If we have a place of record where things are coming before the board as part of the work plan. Given that we have those look aheads, that record could give us a place to put in for all directors or at least committee members to be able to see what's going to be coming up. And what's going through my mind here, and I apologize, this is not fully formed, but I've been reflecting on something that Ms. Johnson, you had asked this executive committee early on this year, which is how to seek additional clarity around what the board expects should come before the board. We've had discussions around code of conduct. We've had discussions around certain things in procurement. And I recognize that we are completing this year having not necessarily well bounded that. But one thing that we might be able to do is as we start to get a sense of what's coming before committees, that at least in a minimum gives directors an opportunity to discuss the work plan going into the year, be aligned on what's coming before that committee, then get look aheads, beyond the way we're doing it right now. I just think there's an opportunity to use that record to also communicate, if that makes sense. So not a fully formed thought. It's something I'll be thinking about going into next year, but I wanted to put that out there, and perhaps Mr. Kroll, that triggers some ideas or thoughts on your end that I'm happy to dialogue about.
Great,
If I may, Madam Chair, just respond there.
that'd be great.
I think the idea of what comes before the board is really a conversation in many ways, though, too, between, the executive committee and predominantly the chair and the GM and CEO. I think the board office's role in all of that is tracking it, facilitating it, but, it's a bit out of my lane to comment on, what exactly should come before the board given the various work of the agency. I think that's a give and take between the board and the GM and CEO. That being said, setting aside that issue, you're not the only director to raise sort of a desire for some sort of technological place where we can track the issues that the board is talking about. Because I think a lot of times the board will have very substantive conversations around a given topic, but the work of the board is sort of a never-ending grind, if you will, and there's oftentimes things that come up and then are really intensely focused on and then set aside. A good example would be the 3 director informal meetings item that came up a year ago, and for whatever reason over the preceding months was sort of set aside, and we finally came back to it in October and are moving it forward now. That is just an example of one of many things that might come before the board. And an example from recent memory is the items related to the budget and the conversations around what's included in the budget and striving towards a middle ground where everyone's content and happy with what's included in that budget. I think that's a conversation ultimately between the GM and CEO, but in so much that the board office can track and facilitate on that, we would be happy to do so. And I know Director Deschel shares a similar concern as to you as to how we can keep record of these things so that as the board's attention returns to these or has space to return to these items, we're not starting from scratch and starting all of our conversations over.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for the comments on that. And yeah, certainly in terms of what comes before, you need to have the dialogue between general manager and executive committee. I think just the communication, using it at least to kind of we get an earlier look at things by being well planned. There's an opportunity there. But thank you for commenting on that. All that sounds great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and thank you all of you for the conversation. I think we've been getting good questions about making our board more effective and efficient, and I appreciate the work that all of us are doing, everyone's doing. Are there any other matters to discuss in this meeting? Dr. Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In years past, we have had a joint meeting with the CDOT Commission, and I was just wondering where we stood on that for this coming year, since this year is practically over.
Right, Mr. Kroll.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Director Catlin. Director Williams had actually reached out earlier this week to our office and inquired as to the same. I asked for a little grace on this. This was the first I had heard that such a meeting exists. So we have since followed up with our counterparts at CDOT and recommended, given where we are in the calendar and the challenges of scheduling things, we've recommended that we host something in early January to that effect.
Great.
Thank you, because there are some new commissioners. And I just think in the spirit of partnerships that we could, as a board, help strengthen that partnership between CDOT and RTD. Anyway, especially with the dialogue surrounding funding for transportation. Thank you.
I agree. And I actually have been thinking that some sort of meeting or gathering with the Front Range Passenger Rail Board might make sense at some point next year as well. It's just something to keep in mind. So thank you. Any other discussion? Any other matters? Please note that today's executive committee meeting was the last one scheduled for 2023. We look forward to seeing everyone, whoever it is, at the next executive committee meeting in January. I want to take a minute just to say thank you to all of you for the good work in managing the changes we're doing with the board and the policies as we move those forward into next year. I look forward to continuing to work with all of you in whatever capacity. And I especially want to thank our GM CEO for her work with all of us, Ms. Snyder, and a big thank you to our board office, to Jack and Ty Shrey and Marie and Jillian for all their great work, who keep us on track and moving forward, and have been so helpful this year as we've made changes and brought Jack Kroll into the system. I think it's been a great addition. Thank you all, and we will see you Tuesday night.
Thank you, Lynn.